So much is going on. We've only got him for about 20 minutes or so. Congressman Ron Paul, I don't know how he does it. Legislation, lobbying on the floor, doing 10, 15 media events a day, writing books, running Campaign for Liberty, supporting Rand Paul with the incredible realignment we're seeing politically, but he does it, and God bless him. He's Congressman Ron Paul. I want to talk about Iran, North Korea, the economy, the border situation. I want to talk about so many issues with Ron Paul, but a congressman from Texas joining us today. Congressman, first off, the political realignment. Every incumbent, whether it's Specter, a Democrat, or whether it's a Republican for the first time in 20 years winning in Hawaii, for the Congress, to your son, Rand Paul, with a 30-point defeat of the establishment Republican. Have you ever seen a realignment like this? Because generally it's one political party or the other that is seeing massive losses. But what I'm seeing is across the board, incumbents and establishment candidates are being annihilated.
No, I think that's absolutely right. This is different. I think there's been periods of time when people get very frustrated, like you indicate. They might shift back and forth from one party to the other. But right now, they're unhappy with both parties. But the real tragedy is that we don't have a good, and I say this word cautiously, a democratic process, the democratic election, the ability of parties to compete. There's a monopoly controlled by the Republicans and the Democrats. And since philosophically they're not too far apart, they sort of gang up on anybody who wants to offer an alternative. So if we had had a very strong third party, so here all the people talk about the Tea Party as if it's a party, but it really isn't a party, it's an alternative. And that's why the mixture comes up, because sometimes Democrats are in trouble, sometimes Republicans are in trouble, but there's no one party to fulfill the role that is necessary. And I don't think that's going to happen soon, because the laws make it very difficult to get on ballots, and the media doesn't allow people to get into the debates and this sort of thing. So they're very, very handicapped. And I just think that we're going to see this messy situation. But I think it's just great that people are unhappy. They're very active. They want changes, and they're picking and choosing, and they're sending a loud message. And both parties are getting a little bit upset. I mean, Republicans, in one sense, they say, well, these Tea Party people, they're a little bit nuts. We can't deal with them. But then when they find out the Tea Party is a political force, they say, oh, I guess we better deal with them. So they're in a dilemma, too. But I think it'll work out as long as the people who are unhappy stick to their guns and say, and trying to agree on some basic principles. We either have too much government or too little government. We either spend too much money or too little bit of spend the money. We either have a lousy foreign policy or we don't have it. So I think those are the kind of things that we have to stick to our guns and be as consistent as possible, and to see what we can do to contribute to a positive change in this country.
There's no doubt, Congressman, I want to get your breakdown on this, that the establishment is scared, though, and they're going to pull out all the stops to try to demonize any type of true grassroots constitutionalist candidate. I mean, we're seeing them say, if you're against the health care bill, you must be a racist. But I think they've overplayed their hand by running around like chickens with their heads cut off.
Yeah, and that's been around, but it's around right now a whole lot because the Tea Party movement is so much bigger. But I can remember in 1996, and I don't know exactly what you were doing in 96, but when I was trying to get back into Congress, both Republicans and Democrats said, well, this guy's crazy. He's even critical of the federal war on drugs. Anybody that's critical on the war on drugs must mean he wants to give drugs to kids, that sort of thing. So they tried real hard to demonize me then. But I came back with honest answers, said that, no, the war on drugs doesn't work. I don't want to use drugs. I don't want to use drugs on my kids. I take care of women delivering babies. To emphasize the evil and the harm of drugs. We won that argument. So they will always try to demonize individuals, but more so today than ever before, because, like you say, they were trying to turn it around. That just because we oppose something Obama proposes, oh, you must be a racist. It's the demagogues that really bugged me.
But, in 96, I was interviewing you when you were getting back into office, and I do remember that, and they a few years ago had your head floating around out in space, always trying to make you look like the outsider. But as many newspapers have reported, your views, the Constitution, my views, are now the majority view, and the establishment is desperate and is very, very afraid. What else do you see them from your years of research and experiencing this in Congress? What else do you think the big central banks and others are going to do to try to keep control of the people?
Well, I think whatever they think is necessary, and I had some information passed on to me, sort of inside information of somebody who knew somebody that was well tuned to the people at the Federal Reserve, and they say they are really, really concerned about our movement to expose the Fed for what they're doing. Not so much that they think tomorrow we're going to have a victory and have a thorough audit and the Fed is going to end, but what they're upset or worried about is the fact that more and more people are aware of the Federal Reserve now like never before, and exposure is the most important thing. Then the changes will come and the reforms will come. So they know exactly what we've been talking about. I think that's where we've had such a tremendous success in the freedom movement in the last decade or so, is that people have become aware of the power of the Federal Reserve. And I'm so delighted when I go to the universities, and the next generation will know about the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve was something you never even learned about in college. I mean, they just fluffed over this. It wasn't important. They took care of us. They knew how to run the economy. That has ended, and I think even those who defend the Fed are very frightened about it.
Did you have a chance to see Zbigniew Brzezinski's speech to the CFR last week? Because he said, for the first time in world history, the planet is awake to us and our move for global government. And he basically said, we are in trouble.
I didn't see that, but I hope he has some real reasons to be worried about that. But was it Biden that said something the other day that Brussels should be the capital for the free world or something like that?
Yeah, they're really coming out in the open with their world government because we've exposed it. And I want to run rapid fire now through a bunch of different issues while we have you. We're very honored to have Congressman Ron Paul with us today live on the 26th day of May 2010. You mentioned the war on drugs. I saw an interview with you back in the late 1980s. And you were talking about the CIA who'd been caught shipping in heroin then. And a few months ago, you gave a speech and said there's been a CIA coup in America. Since then, it's been in the New York Times, the Washington Post, AFP, French news agency, and even Geraldo Rivera on Fox. They go, yes, our troops are helping grow the opium for the farmers, because if they don't, Al-Qaeda will get it and sell it. What an amazing move to go from denying that they're producing it and shipping a lot of it in to saying, oh, yes, we have to, or Al-Qaeda would get it. Well, if you just decriminalized it, that would take the money out, and then Al-Qaeda, as they call it, wouldn't. I mean, that was the excuse on the crack cocaine. Well, we've got to ship the cocaine in, or the communists, will get the money. Can you speak to that, sir?
Well, I don't have the absolute proof of it, but my suspicion is, and just because of the stories you hear, I think they really want drugs to be illegal, because I think that's the way they raise money for their governments that's off the books. They own banks. They can get involved in enterprise, and they have to get their cash, and it never comes through. Well, not all of it. Some of it will come through appropriations and legally, even though we don't know where it goes and who controls it. But they even need even more money because they're doing so much. There's so much activity going on. So in many ways, they are very, very powerful, and it is in their interest to keep the drug war going. So it's a bit of an irony that some very, very sincere church-believing people who want to take care of the kids believe that, we have to keep this war going. At the same time, they're inadvertently allies with the drug dealers who want the drugs to be kept illegal. And then you point out, well, that the government and the CIA is involved as well.
Well, Congressman, I know you're super busy and none of us can be on top of everything, but would you like us to send you a packet of mainstream news where they just calmly admit that, okay, our troops, they had Geraldo Rivera with a Marine Corps commander with the troops explaining why they help the farmers grow the opium. They're now basically bringing this out and hiding it in plain view.
Well, I've seen some of that, but I can always look at more material when it's available.
Well, here's one more issue on that subject. Did you see the Washington Post 2 days ago. CIA units, wacky idea, depicts Saddam as gay. And then in the article, it quotes them as admitting that the CIA put out at least one fake Osama bin Laden video. That sounds like that should be a congressional investigation.
Yeah, well, there's so many things that should be congressional investigations that sometimes, though, it becomes difficult if you hear of a real problem. I think, well, I guess I ought to report this. Where should I go? The FBI and the CIA, and they'll investigate it for me? Well, who's going to investigate the investigators? And that's our job, and that's what our responsibility is, to hopefully wake up enough people to find out who to believe and who not to believe.
Congressman, getting into what's happening on the economic front, we read your quotes a few weeks ago about Bernie Sanders, paraphrasing, basically he sold out or he flip-flopped, and then Grayson running around saying we beat the Fed. I mean, you're the real expert in Congress, recognized on this with the Fed. What really happened?
Well, we got 1207 passed into the House reform bill, and that bill passed on the House floor. The big vote was in the committee, so that's in there, even though it's in a very bad bill. When it got to the Senate, Bernie Sanders is the one that introduced 1207 and 604, I believe, in the Senate, and at the last minute, he changed his mind and took what the establishment agreed to, another severely watered-down version of it. It wasn't really an audit. It was just a glimpse of what's been going on for the past 2 years, which it had already agreed to. But it passed, like, I think 96-0, and the administration agreed to. Obama said he'd sign it, and Democratic and Republican leadership agreed to that. And then the 1207 version was brought up by Vitter, and when that got to the Senate floor, we only got 37 votes. So I think people should pay attention to those who did not vote for the real audit language in the Senate, and this to me is a bailout for the system and for the Federal Reserve. But now they have finally passed that version in the Senate, and it's going to conference. So I'm trying to keep an eye on that very closely and see if we can influence the conference. And I just don't know whether we get that modified or what will happen. But I think right now the cards are stacked against us. But we're going to keep fighting, because the more attention we get and the more the people know, I think we can be proud of how far we've gotten already and how much people know about it. But
well, that's right, Congressman. 25 years ago, you didn't get one co-sponsor when you were first in Congress. Now you passed it in the House. It went to the Senate. I saw a headline where you were saying that those that voted against your audit the Fed bill will be held accountable, though, by the voters.
Oh, yeah, they should be. And every time, you think of the Republicans will retaliate against Republicans. And, we saw that in Utah. So these votes are very important. And the bailout vote was crucial in a lot of this stimulus for the Tea Party movement. So this is just another vote that we can use and help alert the people.
We've only got about 6 minutes left with Congressman Ron Paul. His time is so precious. We're going to give you some websites before he leaves so you can get involved in the Campaign for Liberty or Rand Paul's campaign, which is so important. But looking at the border situation, the Deputy Homeland Security Director said last Friday that they may not process illegals referred to them from Arizona. I've already seen previous reports of where sheriffs and others release illegals for serious crimes out of jail, and the feds won't pick them up. I mean, is this not serious dereliction of duty and or treason by Homeland Security?
So much could be solved with our use of our Constitution and the principle of private property. If you have somebody walking your house and they're trespassing, and they might not have even committed a crime, they might not have, shot anybody or stolen anything yet, they just trespass, and they walk in your house, and they have no right to be there. We call the police, and the police call them, and they prosecute them. But they don't apply that to people who are walking across this land and walking across these ranches. As a matter of fact, even if you do anything to stop trespassers, you can get into trouble. You're taking the law into your own hands. The states aren't allowed to do what they should do. And when the states finally get totally frustrated, they have to pass a law that then is argued about. I have some reservations about that law, but not about the intent and what they're trying to do and the dereliction of duty of the federal government. I would like to see more approach to this. That if you can't get them at the border and stop the influx, then as soon as they apply, for benefits, then that's when we should deal with it.
I agree. Deny them the welfare benefits, and that will stop. But the government, again, wants this dependent group. Were you in the chamber when Calderon lectured and said, repass the assault weapons ban, effectively taking semi-automatics from American people?
Nope, I wasn't there, and that's a personal thing with me. There's a limit to what I can actually tolerate someday. So I did listen to it on TV and all, but I didn't feel like I should be present there.
I mean, did that disgust you?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it disgusted me, but I knew what he was going to say, and why do we give... I mean, about a couple of years ago, they had Karzai down there. I mean, Karzai is just our henchman that we have a hired gun. And they have him here down there as a head of a state and talking to a joint session of Congress. I mean, that's more than I need.
Well, his brother is admittedly, even in the New York Times, the top opium king.
Yeah. And yet, in one of these days, we'll depose him. Something will happen. He'll be gone. And, the big thing over there right now is this battle is about to start in Afghanistan. And there's no guarantees that even with all our military might that we're going to have a military victory there. We will not have a political victory. It'll be a political defeat because it'll just further stimulate hatred and all the other problems that you get by occupation of foreign countries. But militarily, whether this battle can be won is the real question.
Well, Congressman, that's part of my last two questions, then we'll let you go. Specifically, with the entire geopolitical situation, North Korea on a war footing, the Pentagon saying they're ready for war. Meanwhile, our own government helped give the reactors to North Korea, as you know. You've got the Israel saying they may strike Iran. Obama saying he would, support them if they did. You've got the Predator drones, 1,000 of them now, going in to Pakistan, which many experts say is an act of war. You've said the Iran sanctions are an act of war. I mean, it looks like the build-up to World War I or World War II. Can you speak to the overall atmosphere, and does the system have a desire to have a world crisis? And then finally, what do you see with the EU meltdown?
Well, it sort of blows my mind when I think about our financial crisis and not only the meltdown of the European nations, but ours as well. And that they hardly blink an eye that they can talk about spreading this war in the Middle East into Iran, to continue the civilian CIA bombing of these various countries. But this thing in Korea, it's way out of proportion to what we should be doing. I resent the fact that a generation or two ago, we have signed these treaties, have been involved, and had troops in Korea all that time, and we're just sitting there. If there's ever a problem, we get dragged into it. But this week, we had a resolution on the House floor. There were 3 of us that voted against it, and the resolution was essentially an authorization to go war, do whatever is necessary. And the circumstances that we live today, you never come to the Congress and make a declaration of war. We have these so-called promises. But how can one generation promise the next generation that we will deliver all the money and all the soldiers that will be necessary? We should just bring ourselves out of those situations. But this thing was just overwhelmingly passed. But it was billed as, expressing our concerns and our condolences for the people who died there. And then at the bottom, it gives the authority to say, and we do authorize, whatever force and whatever is necessary to take care of this problem.
Well, it's the same thing with the finances in Europe. Same thing that happened here. Taking the pension funds, raising the taxes, VAT taxes. Europe is now sinking into the central bank design trap. In closing, you've been talking about a total global meltdown for a long time, based on derivatives, Dr. Paul. And now it looks like we're approaching the vortex.
Yeah, we're getting awfully close, and people try to get me to say when I think it's going to happen, and I don't know exactly when it's going to happen, but I know it is unsustainable because the dollar is still being trusted, and that is a subjective event. People subjectively still say, well, we can trust the dollar. It is the world currency. but eventually they'll lose trust in the dollar. And I think if you look at the devaluation of the dollar against gold, you realize that something big is going on right now, because up until a month or two ago, the gold and the dollar always was related to the stock market and other currencies and commodities. But right now, more people are seeing the devaluation of the dollar against gold, which is the ultimate measurement. And that means that the time is getting much closer to the rejection of the system. I mean, the Europeans are broke. We're bailing them out with dollars. How about the cities? They're broke. Are we going to let cities and states fail after bailing out Wall Street and bailing out Greece? There's no way. They're always going to come to the rescue, print the money, and they're going to inflate until the point when the people are holding the dollars overseas say, we're spending them. The Chinese are pretty smart people. They're spending those dollars. They're around buying natural resources around the world with dollars they earn from us. At the same time, we think we have to protect our natural resources by invading countries and occupying and protecting our oil. We have lost our way.
And clearly, we have a revolution of liberty and freedom, a restoration of the republic, led by yourself and Rand Paul. Give us the websites for people to get involved with your campaign, with Campaign for Liberty, with Rand, with everybody in putting out the alternative to the New World Order.
Well, all my websites can be found by ronpaul.org, and I think Rand's is randpaul.com. So, but ronpaul.org will get you to about 6 of my websites.